morning and welcome back to it, the Now Morning Show here on TTT, where all morning long we've been re-emphasizing the need to tell our stories. And one of the greatest storytellers in the history of Trinbagonian culture is quite the trickster, and he's called Anansi. So naturally, this morning we're going to be joined by Mr. Rubadiri Victor, the director of Wire Folklore Theatre and, of course, the author of the Anansi book series, along with Miss Renee Michelle King, educator and lead actress for Wire Folklore Theatre in the upcoming film that we're going to talk about this morning, about that trickster himself. Good morning, lady and gentlemen.
Morning, morning, morning. morning.
And as we say, coming up for April 1st, aka Damn Fools, when we play the trick, what we have to say?
Compare Anansi.
Ah, boy. Now, we were talking before the break about how I really not on this trick thing. And full disclaimer, if you try anything, I might fight you. So please exempt me from that on April Fools.
One person that exempted.
But I do look forward to the possibility of taking it back to the old days when we used to play those tricks, when we used to say those things, and when we celebrated Anansi. Of course, it is necessary to tell our stories.
Yeah.
How is Wire doing that this time around?
Right, well, this year, this is the 8th year of Wire Folklore Theatre.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you know, we perform literally in front of tens of thousands of people, schools and the public and that kind of stuff over that period. 12 original plays. The most popular one happened to be an Anansi story featuring a female Anansi, right? Renee, right? And that was so popular, it started an entire series and a series of novels that are now best-selling. They're selling thousands and thousands. I've just sold out. The second one is just sold out its 5th run. Wow. And it's going to go into a 6th production
look
again.
at you.
So this year we decided that you know, coming out of COVID and not having had a season for so long and those kinds of things, we decided, and because we're coming up to the 3rd book in the trilogy, which kind of takes the adventure even further and larger, that we would do a season of Anansi. And we think that we've been, like, thousands of people have been buying the books, tens of thousands of people have been coming to the plays. So we know now that the folklore is starting to catch on, because, I mean, that particular play, every year, schools would see it, and then the next year they're like, you're bringing back the and the tender, and it's like, you know, it's like, but you saw that like 2 years
if
straight.
If it ain't broke, no fix it. Let's go.
So it made us know that something was working and that the character was, you know, was catching on. So we decided to do the season of Anansi throughout the month of April. That's the 2nd book in the series that you see on the screen there, Anansi and the Book of Night. And it's a season, it's a month of events, readings, storytelling in schools, and at the end of the month, and actually in May, from May 1st, we had Sapa, and we're going to be there for Tuesday, Wednesday, doing schools right through, and then a public performance at the end. And then the following week, Friday, we are at the government auditorium at government campus.
Right.
And there's a matinee show on the Saturday. There's a late show, and then there's a matinee show on the Saturday. And schools right through the day on that Friday again. Wow. And right through the month, we are in the school system, working with NALIS, the National Library Association. Perfect. So on Wednesday the 5th, we're at NALIS. We're on Port of Spain. We're there again on the 18th, and then again on the 29th, we're in San Fernando.
So you're all over the country.
Yeah, and we're in district libraries, we're all over. We're doing all kinds of stuff.
Of course, and making sure that the stories are told. But it is a very different story when we hear about a female Anansi. And I imagine that as an actress, as an educator, the opportunity gave you quite a lot to work with. What was the initial thought when he proposed a female Anansi to you?
Well, initially, I think what Anansi stood for, a lot of people know him to be a trickster. Right. When you look at the female Anansi, or at least how we've painted the female Anansi, it's more or less a shadow of independence. It's a shadow of empowerment, and it's, you know, that empowerment for women. And I think though we may not have intended for it to be like that initially, because Anansi is known to be the trickster, she really becomes the hero of the story. So I think it foreshadows that women can be heroes, and it certainly allows us to see ourselves like that. Little girls coming up get to see themselves like that. And it's still very playful, and it's not too serious. So it's very enjoyable, I guess, to see Anansi transform, and of course, maybe to see the difference between the male Anansi, and then see, I guess, as I said, Anansi transform into this hero as the female.
I mean, one thing is that
this is his grandmother as a young spider, so that's who she is. So we're telling the lineage of
heritage of Anansi.
Yeah. So it goes, and then we're going to tell the story of his son, and then we're going to come to him eventually.
Now, don't give it all away, because we know it's a trilogy, so there is more to the books. But before you get to the actual trilogy in terms of writing form, I know that a big part of the Anansi story would have been Mark Nottingham, as he would have played Anansi for years and years.
Yeah.
And of course, unfortunately, we lost him earlier this year. So that I imagine there is quite a bit to do in dedication to him. How are we doing that this time around?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, Mark was our male Anansi for the traditional Anansi story. When I decided I was doing this, I went to the library and the archives and read every single folklore story there was, because I'm a nerd, and listened to everything. And there was one story that kept repeating again and again, all the villages, all of the islands. There are thousands of stories.
Right.
Only a couple have survived here in the Caribbean, from the Ashanti and the Akan in Ghana, when it came over in transition here for slavery. And what I realized in that story was that I could see the ancestors calling their children, saying, you see this story, you see this, don't forget this, because the strategies inside the story of survival, every Caribbean person, if you read those stories, you would realize that all of us do those things like
innately.
And it is that story, Anansi tricks beast, snake, and tiger, where he wins the right to tell stories. The power of the story is possibly the greatest story of trickster ever told in human history. And I realized that was repeating, and then I had to look for the lead. Who could play this? It was Mark. You know, Mark had that, he just had that energy and that spirit and that kind of stuff. And he nailed it. And he played that character, and he played the boy character in nearly everything that we did. He would play that kind of innocent, naive kind of boy. He would come with that energy, you know, and then he'd have the little flip side, the little edge, and that kind of stuff. And Mark really, he had that beautiful kind of energy on stage, you know, and command and skill, you know. And him and his best friend, his brother in arms, Pinny Arnold, you know, the two of them indispensable to the troupe, you know. And then Mark and Renee formed this like incredible duo on stage. So they would be the boy and the girl in a number of the stories and those kinds of things, or even play off against one another. So he would be the dragons, some of the dragons that oppose her in the Anansi stories. And they just had a kind of chemistry on stage. And so losing Mark as a human being and as a force, you know, Rapso-man from blackmail, you know, that kind of fourth generation Rapso and that kind of thing, and as a teacher, Barataria Anglican Primary, is a serious blow. And, you know, to lose a talent like that so young, you know. And so we had to dedicate this entire inaugural festival season of Anansi to him. And throughout the entire thing, we will be doing different things and that kind of stuff. We have to recast his role. So that's going to be a whole big audition to kind of find the person who will take on, you know,
And that is a huge role to take on, but it will happen because the stories must be told. So I want to say thank you this morning, only because I want everybody to head on out and get into the action. Get the storytelling going, rename April Fools, if you will, and make sure that we keep telling the story of Mark and others like him with Anansi. Now, guys, I know there is a workshop coming up. There are schools that you're going to be attending. And, of course, we will have to talk about the book. So I feel like you're going to be back on set with us sometime soon.
Just tell them to go to New Adventures of Anansi on Facebook and check out the schedule for the month so they could see, you know, who, what, when, why, how. Or they can contact us at 797-0949, schools who want us to appear there or get to the NALIS things or come to the SAPA and government auditorium things. So give us a buzz, 797-0949. Anyone who's interested in the festival, you know.
And we will keep telling those stories, not tricks per se, but certainly making sure that our stories continue to be told. We've got more of those coming back to you when we come back on the Now Morning Show. But for now, we take a break. Stick around, guys.
I thought I was cool, but it's now I realize